Welcome to Cultural Canvases, Black Men Reshaping Fine Art and Creative Spaces, of course. I am your host, Badir McCleary. This is a podcast that dives into the vibrant world of contemporary art, design, and digital creation by Black male professionals. Today, I have a special guest for this next episode, Brother Tim McFarlane from Philly, a super dope artist that I just met last year. Was following. We've been following each other for a little bit, and I got a chance to visit his studio, and I'm very impressed, not only with the work, but just the way the brother carries himself, the organization, because a lot of studios I go in look crazy. So I think a lot of artists can learn from the organization of how he keeps things together and just, his approach to his practice. So, Brother Tim, welcome. Thank you for being here.
Yeah. Thank you for having me. Great to be here.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So I want to start, kind of from the beginning. We're both in the city, but
Yeah.
were you born in Philly? Were you raised in the city?
Yeah. Born and raised. Lived here my whole life. I've been to other places, but Philly's my home base.
So I always ask anybody that's from Philly, what high school did you go to?
Okay. Well, it started out. I started out at Central, and I wound up at Alney. When I
Nice.
was going into the 10th grade at Central, my father died. So, like, being Central being the academically, you know, uh, gifted
Powerhouse.
school that it is, your powerhouse. Yeah, I wasn't able to keep up after that tragedy. So
Yeah.
I went over to Alney and graduated from there. And after that, I went to Temple.
Nice. So were you involved in Temple's art program at all? Because with Tyler and all that stuff, where did you get into the arts at school?
So yeah, I mean, when I was in high school, I was very heavily into the arts. My in the 10th grade, I had a teacher who was just like, where her art class was just basically babysitting. But when I got to the 11th grade, I got to go to the upper level art class, and that's where things started clicking for me, and I started
Yeah.
feeling like, okay, I really want to pursue this, for the rest of my life. And so then when I went to Temple, I went to the main campus. At that time, Tyler wasn't on the main campus; it was still up in
Okay.
Elkins Park. So,
Yeah.
so there were a lot of things going on. So I went to the main campus. Well, partly because my high school art teacher, he was great. And he recognized my talent and everything, but he said, like, when you go to school, like, try to, like, major in something that's practical,
Hmm.
and do your art on the side. You know what I mean? So
Hmm.
I tried doing that. I at the time I went into, like, radio, television, and film. That's the courses they had at the time. I think it's probably like, media now or whatever.
Yeah.
And then I went undecided. And then, of all things, I went to business because I had been working since I was 13. So I was like, okay, I can do this. But then I got into some of
Yeah.
those, like, upper level math courses. I was like, yeah,
Woo.
this is not for me. you know. So anyway, I had to leave school for a few years. I had to
Mhm.
drop out because I had money issues.
Mhm.
So for 5 years, I wasn't in school, but I was still making my art. So, and
Mhm.
at the time, I was, like, making a lot of, like, still life work, landscape. So I was going out behind the art museum up Kelly Drive and doing,
Mhm.
like, plein air painting. I was out there with my easel and my,
Yeah.
canvases and stuff, and doing everything, right there. People would be, like, going by, stopping by, but it was really cool. So I mean, that kind of, like, really cemented it for me.
Mhm.
Since I was doing this, I was still doing this, even though I wasn't in school or anything. So I'm like, yeah. So what I decided to do is I still wanted to get my degree. So
Facts.
after
Yeah.
5 years, I was able to find my way back into school by having a
Nice.
part-time job and going to school part-time. And eventually I was able to go to school full-time. So I went back in 91 and graduated from Temple in 94.
Nice. Nice. So what artist in the city? Because we got one thing people don't know about Philly is that it's plenty of amazing artists
Oh,
in the
yeah.
city, and the history is just rich.
Yeah.
Which artists during that period do you think that you clung to that made you feel that not only this was something that you could do, but this is something that you could succeed in?
Um, I can't think of his name right now. He passed like a couple of years ago, and
Barkley
I
Hendricks?
no, no, not
Not
Barkley
Barkley.
Hendricks. No, it was
Charles Searles?
no, not Charles. Well, I knew of Charles Searles, but it wasn't Charles Searles. It was I can't think of his name. It'll come back. It'll come to me.
Yeah, it'll pop up.
Yeah, yeah. So I was going to also I was in the habit of going to a lot of art galleries at the time
Mhm.
too.
Mhm.
And at that time, a lot of the art galleries here in Philadelphia were like on Walnut Street.
Yep.
So there was like a whole bunch of them there. This is before Old City happened.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, so I was always seeing a lot of art. I was going to the art museum. I remember seeing a show by Martin Puryear had a show there, and that really
Yeah.
knocked my socks off. Seeing his work. That man's amazing.
Oh, he's a beast. Did you
Mo
see
Brooker.
Mo Brooker?
Yeah,
Mo
yeah,
Brooker.
yeah,
Yes,
yeah,
yes, yes,
yeah,
yes. I had
yeah.
just
So
seen a piece of his. I think at James Dupree's place. He had
okay,
a Mo
okay,
Brooker piece.
yeah.
I don't know why that name just didn't pop into my head. But with speaking of Martin Puryear, did you get a chance to see the public art piece that he had on? I think it was Kelly Drive with like
I didn't
the.
get to see it in person. No.
I didn't get to see
Yeah.
it either. I was so upset. Like I was dealing with
Yeah.
stuff in LA and working at the time, and I couldn't get over here.
Yeah.
And I couldn't get to the Biennale to see his work. But when you said Martin Puryear, he's one of my favorites.
Yeah.
One of
Yeah.
my favorites, man.
Yeah.
Like he's a beast. So I guess adding on to that, like, do you feel that as you were coming up and learning about arts in Philadelphia, do you think you were more intrigued by the contemporary works or that rich history of like the impressionism of the Renaissance that's like
Mhm.
housed in
It was a
all these
little
great
bit.
institutions?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It was a little bit of both because,
Mhm.
like, during that 5 year period, I was out of school. I was still, like I said, I was still working with, landscapes and so forth,
Yeah.
and still life work. But I was finding myself like gradually like moving towards more contemporary work at the same
Mm.
time. So
Hmm.
I really wasn't like engaged with it as much. I was reading a lot. I was reading through a lot of like art magazines and things. So I had
Yeah.
an idea of what was going on in other places like New York, like with Basquiat and Keith
Hmm.
Haring, all those guys during that time. But it didn't really like click in for me because I was still like very much in the realm of making art from what I saw, basically. You know what I mean? It
Yeah.
wasn't until a little later that I became more interested in working a little bit more with ideas, as as well as forums and everything. So but
Yeah.
during that time, yeah, I found myself, moving like ever so slowly. I actually started making like, these weird like collages. Like in the 80s,
Mhm.
80s design was like really ridiculous. You know what I mean? There was all like angles and squiggles and all that stuff. And
Yeah.
I up until a few years ago, I still had like these like big Bristol boards that
Mm.
I'd done like some random, abstract experiments on back in like 88 or so. But anyway,
Nice.
it wasn't until I went back to school, I got back to school in 91 that I really, dove more into contemporary art.
Do you think that the period of you waiting out of school helped you appreciate art practice a little bit more? Because I know there are folks that, you know, sometimes like they hate going to the studio, but then there's
Mhm.
other folks that are like, man, I wish I had a studio to go to. I'd be in
Right.
there every day,
Yeah, yeah,
so
yeah. No, absolutely. It absolutely did. I mean, the thing is, it's like I knew I still wanted to do it. You know what I mean? So, and my studio was anywhere it could be. Like there was a
yeah.
point where I was renting a room out in a friend's house in South Philly, like at 15th and Dickinson, man. And it was
Mhm.
like almost like a closet. You know what I mean? And I was still doing stuff like right there. My bed was like, right here. My like easel was like here, so
Hmm.
and then eventually like I had a little thing downstairs, but yeah, so anywhere that I went, I just made a studio. And I mean the fire was already lit within me, so
Hmm.
it just I just had to do the work.
Yeah. Like, with your work, and I'm a huge fan of abstract work. You know, a lot of my good friends in LA are
Mhm.
abstract artists. You know,
Yeah.
I think I have like a special spot in my heart for abstract work. Um, how 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 tough has it been for you to make a space for abstract work in a city that's and an art world for that matter that's
Hmm.
focused most on portraiture. You know, this city has a lot of landscape based. You know, you talked about plein air,
Hmm.
and also a lot of mixed media. You know,
Hmm.
Philadelphia has become a real mixed media type of city, which I'm
Hmm.
loving. So, how
Yeah.
does the abstract practice stand out in all of that?
I mean, I just do what I do. You know what I mean? I don't
Yeah,
let anything else, get in my way.
I hear that.
Yeah, it's really just about, you know, I draw strength from, I just draw strength from the work that I do and, other people's work that I see. And mainly it's just that I know that, I'm just engaged in a practice that is, that's true to me, that's true to, I make the work that I want to see in the world also.
Hmm.
So there's, it is like, to a certain degree, I think it is tough.
Yeah.
In general, because Philly is also known, like I think as you hit on this a little earlier, Philly is known as a like more of a realist. There's a
Hmm.
realist tradition here, which is great. You know what I mean? Good art is good
Yeah.
art, regardless.
Facts.
Um,
Big facts.
yeah, but yeah, no, I just have a steadfastness about what I believe in, what I want to do. So that just keeps me going, regardless of like how much something sells.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, I've been painting for let's say like since I go back to high school, so it's been like 40 something years. I've
Man,
been continuously making work. With
how do you keep that going? You know what I mean? Like, I mean, nowadays, when folks see something, they try it for 10 hours at the most, and if
right,
it doesn't get the result, it's on to the next thing because life moves so fast.
yeah,
And we understand the passion of, when we love something, we can continuously do it without resolve or any removal. But
hmm,
how do you constantly go day after day just creating? Is that like something part of a ritual, or is it just something that's innate to where you just see something, you make something?
yeah. It's just innate. It's not even about like I tell people all the time, I have a gallery here, that represents my
Hmm.
work. And even if I didn't have that gallery, I would still be doing something, you know what I mean,
Yeah.
regardless. And
Oh yeah.
so it's really just something that's within me that keeps me going. Um,
How,
and
I one
yeah,
one quick question, because you mentioned the galleries. Like, I wanted, like, a lot of artists have asked me, and I'm sure they asked other artists, like, what's been your experience in approaching a gallery with having them understand not only who you are as an artist, but what your work represents, and
hmm,
how both of those things coincide with your practice. Because I think those things are important, because what people see, that result can be one thing, who you are as an artist can be
hmm.
another thing, and what happens in that studio can be that third thing. So how does all of those things work for you in presenting yourself to a potential gallerist that represents you?
For me, it was there were when I signed on with Bridget Mayer, there were a few things that had been happening. So
Hmm.
this was around 2002 or so that I actually signed on. So I've been working with her for a long time.
Nice.
Um, so a few things had been happening. Number one, I had gotten to a point after I had been out of school for a while and my work had matured a bit where I felt
Hmm.
like I could, start approaching galleries. The
Hmm.
second thing was that I knew that with the type of work I was doing, there was only like there were only like a few galleries here in Philadelphia that I was going to try to approach. You know what I mean? I think this is
Hmm.
really important for artists to understand, especially younger artists, is that you have to do your
Yes.
homework. If
Yes.
you're making if you're making realist work, don't approach a gallery that's going to be, showing mostly abstract work. I mean, most of the time it's not going to work.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, there were a few galleries, and Bridget was one. She was just starting up at the time. And so I started going to her shows, and eventually, we started talking a little bit, and then I got published in New American Paintings, which is a national journal that comes out. It's a juried exhibition book.
Oh yeah.
It's the only one that I would recommend to anybody of that sort. And then also, like, locally, I had gotten into the Fleischer Art Memorial's Fleischer Challenge exhibition, which is a regional exhibition. So there were like there was like a cross pollination of like a lot of different things happening at the same time. So Bridget caught wind of my work. I started, going to a gallery, and then we had a conversation, and she emailed me one time asking if I would bring slides by. And at that time, nothing was digital like this now. It was like actual slides. Yeah.
That's how there's history there. When you say slides,
I still have some of those things too, and I just keep them just because. But anyway, so yeah, I dropped some slides off. Months go by. I'm not even, I didn't hear from her for a little bit, and then but in the meantime, I'm not really paying attention to that too much. I'm just like doing my work or whatever. I'm not sitting there like twiddling my thumbs waiting, because you drive yourself crazy doing that kind of thing. So I wound up waited a few months, and then she called and asked about setting up a studio visit. And that took another several months. And then eventually we got the meeting in the studio. And, she offered me to, after looking at, some more of my work and everything. And so she offered me representation at the time. Nice. And it was kind of interesting because at the time my work was like, I was in between bodies of work. So a lot of times, galleries and gallerists are interested in, seeing that you're like kind of consistent with your practice. Not that you're making the same work all the time, but a lot of times they want to like know, like, where your head is and, what you're thinking about with the work and so forth.
And know what they're getting.
Yeah, and what they're getting. Exactly. Yeah, because, it's a huge investment for gallerists to take someone on, you know what I mean? So both, professionally as well as, monetarily, they want to know it's a business, it's a business. So they want to know.
It's a definite business.
And they want to know what they're getting into.
And that's where, things where I would talk with the artists and, one of the main things that, artists that I've worked with, friends, non-friends, the artists that I've just met is they're like, this gallery system sucks. They take 50%. And I'm like, all right, in the beginning, I used to be, like, that rah. But then once you own a gallery and go through that process and you understand what it actually takes to be profitable, not just successful, because you can be successful as a gallery and make no money.
Right, exactly.
But to keep those doors open, to keep those lights on, it takes real strategy and, being able to understand, like, which artists can help fuel that, that charge. So it's like when an artist gets selected by a gallery, that's a badge of honor. Not every artist needs a gallery, but at the same time, someone's asking to work with you. And with Bridget, in her gallery, I know her gallery does great work. And the history that you and her have says a lot, and there's not many artists that will ever have, a history like that, especially nowadays in our microwave and popcorn society that lasts that long.
Yeah, and things have changed in the art world too. There's a lot more art. I mean, there's a more of a variety of way for artists to work with galleries as well. You know what I mean? A lot of people, a lot of it is more like collaborations where, like, a gallery might give you a show or might show your work in a group show or a 2-person show to see, to gauge interest and stuff like
test that market.
And test the market, you know what I mean? But they won't take you on as a represented artist, but they might like give you a show to see, where how you might fit in with their program and whatnot. So
Yeah.
amongst other ways that people can get their work out. Um,
Yeah, I mean, I think that's part of the etiquette, though. Like, I think a
mhm,
responsible gallerist, won't take an artist that they know they don't have clientele for.
right,
And I think a lot of artists um, get put off by that,
hmm,
not understanding the business aspect because
right,
we're in a kumbaya type field, right? I
right,
mean, where everybody's like, well, you got to be creative. It's very hippie-ish sometimes, on the
hmm,
creative side where everybody love everybody, But then there's also that shrewd side of business to where
hmm,
people forget, like, somebody's footing the bill, for
right,
this exhibition, for this
right,
museum,
right,
for this public art piece.
right,
Not every gallerist gets a government grant.
right, right,
Many of them are funding these, ventures out of their pocket or
right,
out of savings, missing time with their family. So there has to be a reciprocated professionalism,
right,
when
exactly,
it comes to that. And, a lot of artists and a lot of gallerists can see that a lot of artists won't provide that,
right,
and they don't, there's that disconnect with, the artist and gallerist community, I think, overall. But when you
hmm,
see a good gallerist artist relationship that works, oh man,
hmm.
it's a beautiful thing. It's a really
Yeah, yeah,
beautiful thing to see.
it's absolutely amazing, Bridget is one of those, also because it goes both ways. It's a
Yeah.
relationship, you know what I mean. And Bridget is one of those rare gallerists that you can really trust,
Hmm.
to actually work for you and to get
Yeah.
your work out there, so that's the other side,
What do you
so
think
yeah.
in that process? Like, what do you think has been a huge turning point or defining moment in your practice and also in your exhibition career?
Turning point. Oh wow. I think for me in my practice, like in the last like few years, it has been moving beyond my regular paintings and moving into more
Hmm.
like the public spaces. I've had a chance,
Hmm.
public and semi-public spaces. So the pandemic going back to 2020 was like really interesting for a lot of artists. I think a lot of us
Hmm.
were able to get a lot of like opportunities and that we ordinarily wouldn't have had. But I
Hmm.
had three projects that leaked from 2019 into 2020 that were still going on, and one of them was a mural project through Mural Arts here, and
Hmm.
and that was a whole new experience for me having my work, working on something of that scale. I mean,
Hmm.
my mural is at 10th and Callow Hill. It's called Bound Together.
Yes,
It's
sir.
on the northern end of
Yeah.
Chinatown here in Philly, and that was a game changer for me. Just like being able to, figure out, how to get my work from an 8 by 10 sheet of paper, up to like a, 15, 20 foot,
Yeah.
wall space
That
was,
scale.
yeah,
Yeah.
scaling up like that was quite a challenge. So I think that was a big thing. And I don't know, but there were also, when I look back on it, there were like little breadcrumbs leading back years, because there were like all these other things that happened along the way that
Hmm.
allowed me to be ready for that opportunity. So
Mm-hmm.
so going back some years back, I did like a painting installation. I did like two painting installations in the gallery. Um, and that like started allowing me to figure out how I could like scale my work up a little bit and how it would look and whatnot. So,
Yeah.
and I got used to that sort of thing. So by
Yeah.
the time I got to the mural, even though there was still a lot to learn within that period of time, I was still like mentally, ready
Yeah.
for it.
Yeah. You had that process in place to where it's like,
Yeah,
all right, I
yeah,
got at least a
yeah, yeah.
starting point, you
Yeah, I
know.
had a starting point. Exactly, exactly. Yeah.
So I guess with that mural, helping transition to practice, what do you think was the thing on the gallery side to where it was like, oh, okay, I'm learning how this art world machine works.
Hmm.
Was it like a sale? Was it a fair? Where did it really like
I don't
give
know.
you that aha moment?
it wasn't. There wasn't. I don't know. There was an aha moment. I mean, it's been
Mm.
a constant thing of learning for me.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
Just paying attention to different aspects of the art world. That's and just and just understanding and or trying to understand how some of
Yeah.
the more business side of things work. I started listening
Yeah.
to a lot of podcasts during the during the lockdown and everything, and
Mm-hmm.
a lot of art podcasts and that focus on the art side as well as like the business side or the
Mm-hmm.
market side of things. And so that was one thing. But I mean, going back years, I've tried to keep up with learning about different things along the way. So it hasn't been any
Yeah.
one thing. It's just been a constant.
Yeah, and then that's one of the things, what I love to talk about when it comes to art. I always call them the ABCs of art, and I
Yeah.
even teach my navigating, course like arts, business, and collections, because there's
Hmm.
three parts. It's like the trifecta Medusa, type
Right.
of situation where it's like if you missing one of those things, something's going to suffer. It's like you ever see that meme where they say if you want something good, cheap, and fast, you can't have all three. Like if it's
Right. Yeah.
good and cheap, it's it ain't gonna
Right.
be fast, or if it's, like what I mean. Like
Fast and cheap.
it's
Yeah. Exactly.
it's like one of those things. Like
Right.
if you got the art in the business, you may not have collectors. Sometimes there's
Right.
people that can't find collectors. If you have art and the
Right.
collectors, you might be getting screwed because your
Right.
business might be off. Like
Right.
and then there's situations where we see countless times where it's business and collecting, but the
Hmm.
art is lacking.
Right. Yeah.
So how as an artist do you navigate seeing those type of things to where it's like,
Oh wow.
I've been in this game for 40 years and I know that there's nights in my studio where I don't sleep, where I miss my family, where I do all this and that, and I know
Right.
for a fact that this piece was made 3 days ago because I saw them in the paint store picking up the paints for it. You know
Right.
what I mean? Like, how do how do you deal with something like that when these opportunities come up and you feel that you can knock it out and you have the experience, but it doesn't come your way, or you find out about it too late.
Yeah, you just have to keep going.
Yeah.
It's like things. Sometimes things may sting. Like I've applied for grants like constantly, and like
Yeah.
not yet, but we're working on it.
We're getting there.
Um, getting there. So I yeah, I mean, I learned early on that you really can't take this stuff like too personally,
Yeah.
because the thing about like getting into galleries or getting into jury shows or whatever, um, all of that stuff is so subjective. You know what I mean? And on top
Yep.
of there being like a lot of times being hundreds of people applying for the
Yeah.
same thing that you're applying for, there's just too much to like, to worry about. I mean,
Yeah.
there's too much that could derail you if you worried about it.
Yeah.
So I try
Yeah.
to, whatever I do, whenever I'm, putting myself out there for something, it's like I might feel the feels if like I get rejected from something. I've been
Mm-hmm.
accepted to things and I've been rejected from other things, like a lot of people. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but I feel it for a minute, and I just got to keep working.
Yeah.
That's pretty much it. Like, um, yeah, I don't. There's no other way to really explain it. You just you have to find a way to not internalize these things
Mm-hmm.
and realize that the work is the thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's the thing. That's where it all comes down to. I always tell younger artists the same thing. I always say that you have to put the work first. The work has to come from here. It has to
Mm-hmm.
that has to be the thing first. Whether you
Yeah.
make money from it or not, that's a whole other story. But you have to have that fire to like make the work and to sustain making the work for yourself.
Yeah.
And then you put it out in the world. It may connect with some people. It may not connect with other people. But as
Mm-hmm.
long as you're like, as long as you see your own story coming through, your own vision
Mm-hmm.
coming through in the work, it's feeding you. It's continuously feeding you, and you're making it. then then you can concentrate on everything else. But the first thing you have to you have to trust in yourself, and you have to trust in the work, and then deal with the other stuff.
Yeah, most definitely. What do you think, like being that Philadelphia is such a museum-based city
Mm-hmm.
and it's a arts education city? I mean,
Yeah.
like we have some of the best institutions here. What do you think the museum relationship is with the artist? Like, and not just in Philadelphia, with the art world in general. Like, how do you think museums are welcoming artists, not only just by collecting their work, but
Mm-hmm.
inviting them into programming, inviting them into free artist days, where if you're an
Right.
artist, you can come in and view or come for a tour or something like that. How do you
Right.
feel the engagement is with museums and artists?
I don't know. It's kind of all over the place to me. I still think there's a ways to go.
Mm-hmm.
I think more museums are opening up a little bit more to programming that's more like wider ranging.
Mm-hmm.
Inclusive. I hate that word, but yeah,
Yeah.
inclusive, so to speak. Um, because I've seen some things like the Met, and I forgot the artist's name. He just had video work in the in the main hall when you walk into the Met. I can't remember his name.
Rafik Anadol. That was at the
I think
big digital
so.
piece. Well, that was at the MoMA. Rafik's
Yeah,
piece
yeah.
was
No,
at the
not
MoMA.
him. No, this was at the Met. This was like last. But anyway, there was. I mean, I was amazed seeing that work there. Like,
Mm.
and the type of work that it was. So there are things happening.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, on my end, I've not really been too involved in the museum world, but I have had a couple of pieces recently. I have had the experience of having a couple of pieces collected by institutions
Nice.
here, which has been amazing.
Nice.
Yeah, PAFA, the Pennsylvania Academy of Fine Arts, they brought a piece of mine into their collection a couple
Beautiful.
of years ago, and the Woodmere Museum of Art as well. Brought
Woodmere
a
is an
piece of mine into.
underrated museum.
Yeah,
Very
definitely.
underrated museum,
Very
man.
underrated.
How do you
um,
how do you feel when places like PAFA and Woodmere collect your work? There's like what type of if it gives any validation, what type does it give you as a creator?
I mean, honestly, like in my head, like it took
Mhm.
a while for it to hit me
To
that
hit you, yeah.
yeah, because I'm so involved in making, just figuring out what the next thing is, you know what I mean? And
Yeah.
also there's the the survival aspect too, you're trying to figure out how to keep the money coming in and everything. So there's a lot going on. So it
Yeah.
has, it's taken me a while for it to really settle in. Like, oh wow, yeah, a couple museums, have my work in their
Yeah.
collections, and
Yeah.
that's amazing. It's an amazing honor, and I feel grateful
Mhm.
that these institutions have seen fit to bring my work into their collections. And it is validating. You know what I mean? It really
Mhm.
after all this time, I feel like okay, someone is seeing me. You know what I mean? Someone is picking up on
Yeah.
somewhat on what I'm doing. So that feels really good. Yeah, definitely.
I would say as an artist, how does it feel to uh have your work be placed in situations that you feel is not right for your work? Like let's say you're showing in a gallery that's very prominent, but you don't believe that the works actually complement your work.
Mm.
How do you still take that show? I mean, I've talked with an artist friend of mine who was like, I got an offer into a group show that was, the names were great. The location was awesome. It's a blue chip gallery.
Hmm.
My work fits nowhere in the show, but I would love to not, he doesn't want to miss out on this opportunity because,
Right.
the curator could think maybe he's hard to deal with, things
Right.
like that. How do
Yeah.
you navigate as an artist those type of situations? Because as a curator, I try to make sure that shows make sense. The
Hmm.
artist would come in and see, okay, this is how my piece fit
Right.
into this conversation. But then
Right.
there's others, like you said, with artists, they put you in a group show and it's like, hey, this is just a salon of what's
Right.
out there.
Right.
How do you handle that?
I don't know. I mean, that's a tough one because I haven't really like had that like situation happen.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I'm thinking now, and I'm like, I can't think of any situation for me yet where I've had to deal with that firsthand, where I felt like my work just definitely didn't fit in, because
Mm-hmm.
of someone else's, curation or whatever. Um, no, I haven't. So, I mean, I guess if it did come up, I don't know. That's a what if question. I don't know.
Yeah.
That's kind of tough. I would probably, I mean, more than likely, I might take it. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? Depending on the overall situation,
Yeah.
but I would probably be wary like the next time. You know what I mean? A little bit more like cautious or something like that.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, yeah, I haven't. I can't say I really had that situation. So yeah.
How do you think the older nature of collecting in the city,
Mm.
um how do you think that helps or hinders, the growth of contemporary art in a city like Philadelphia? I mean, like, and then this can be for other cities like Paris, London, all those places as well that has a deep, rich history of
Hmm.
the past, of a lot of innovators, like especially you go into the Barnes, Foundation, and they've
Right.
got, some of the, I mean, if not all of the most iconic
Yeah.
painters of the history, and you almost like you're competing with the attention of not only the visitor but the collector.
Hmm.
How do you feel that plays into helping the growth of the contemporary space and also hindering, that space?
Um, that's a good question. I think that yeah, I think Philly is one of those places that is like kind of on some level kind of slow to come into more contemporary when you come into what's the word I'm looking for, to embrace, I should say,
Mm-hmm.
contemporary art on a large scale.
Yeah.
I feel like for a city the size that we are, we should have a much more robust like gallery, commercial
Yes.
gallery
Yes.
situation happening. There's only like a few here, and like I think that part of it is that our proximity to New York,
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of people have moved here, like who maybe used to live in New York or DC or whatever. Um, and I think a lot of people really haven't tapped into what's here because there's a
Mm-hmm.
huge like swath of people of talent here in terms of
Mm-hmm.
contemporary art. I mean, all the way from like the artist run spaces up to like
Yeah.
people even bigger than me. What I mean, but yeah, it's a weird space. It's a weird place in that
Yeah.
way.
Yeah.
I had my work placed into like collections here, like
Mm-hmm.
corporate collections, which has been good,
Yeah.
and private collections as well. But I think it's hard to gauge overall. But I feel
Mm-hmm.
like there isn't the mass of support for contemporary galleries or whatever here in Philadelphia as there might be in other places like New York. I mean, New York is its own universe anyway. You can't compare it
Yeah.
to anything. But um, I don't know. It's hard to explain. I
Yeah.
mean, how do you feel about that? Since you've curated, you go back and forth here. What has been your experience?
I think it's one of those things to where, I'm not going to say it's lazy curating.
Mm.
I'm going to say that, there there can be at times too much of a city focus,
Hmm.
and not a global focus, to
Right.
where, even in talking with the artist Chuck Stiles, a buddy of mine who's also in the podcast, and he was like, I would love to be able to see other artists come and have shows here,
Mm-hmm.
to where
Right.
it's like I don't necessarily want to go to a show of a Philly artist every weekend because it kind of
Right.
gets repetitive. The
Right.
stories start to align, but
Mm-hmm.
if you start to mix it up, then everybody gets a chance to go somewhere. I
Right.
think that's what makes LA cool, New York cool, and even at times Miami,
Mm-hmm.
because there are those options.
Right, right. There's
And
more
I
of a synergy. There's
more of
like,
a synergy.
yeah, absolutely. I think Philadelphia can be very regionally
Mm-hmm.
focused. Which can be a big problem.
I mean, it's been like that historically, and
Yeah,
being that
exactly.
it's been a place where many, especially Black artists, have come and spent time here.
Right,
Before going to Harlem or coming from Harlem or coming
right,
from Paris,
right.
because Philadelphia was a huge haven for collectors. I
Mm-hmm.
also think though that um, galleries. I mean, there's some good galleries here. Paradigm, Bridget,
Yeah,
Ubuntu Fine Art,
right.
even Urban Art Gallery. They do some really good stuff.
Yeah, there's
But they're
Pennimenty.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
The
yeah. High
Pennimenty.
Tide, even Cherry Street Piers doing good stuff.
Right,
Um, but there isn't anything yet that makes a person visiting the city say, "I want to go there," instead
right,
of Philadelphia Museum of Art.
right,
In
right. Exactly.
LA or New York, you can say, "Oh man, I'm going to hit Gagosian first before I go to the Met," or I'm going to
Right,
hit
exactly.
Medium Tings, or I'm going to hit
Right.
Richard Beavers, or I'm going to hit um, any of these other spaces before I go to Midtown, before I
Right.
go to the High Line or something like that. There's options even in LA before people even go to LACMA, Mocha, or any place like that. They're hitting the local scene because the local scene has everything.
Right.
You know what I mean? I don't get that here, and I think that if the scene focused, I mean, because it's a collective thing, it's not one person's fault, it's not one person's
Right. Yeah.
responsibility.
Right.
If there was a collective movement to say, we want to just show the best of the best, whether they're from Philadelphia, Jersey, Delaware, or wherever,
Right.
even the students. I've been to shows at PAFA where graduate shows. The one I went to recently, I think it was
Mhm.
last year, was amazing.
Right. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. They show
Like
out at PAFA,
amazing.
man.
They show out.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
I wonder, it's like, where do these artists go?
Right.
And there isn't a place. And I thought about that when you start to think of like, like people talk about gentrification and things like that in Philly's universities, Penn, Drexel, St. Joe's, and a lot of the students over the years would get their degrees and all that,
Mhm.
and then go back to where they're from or go somewhere else.
Right.
Now they're staying,
A lot of people have been
you know,
staying more often. Yeah.
and it's building a youthful community that is appreciative of the arts. And I think
Absolutely.
now is the time. I mean, even with I
Yeah.
was at ICA Philly the other night, and their show had a lot of young people there that
Yeah.
were
Oh yeah,
excited
absolutely. Yeah.
excited
And
about
yeah,
seeing the
yeah. And if
shows.
you go to, a lot of these spaces,
Mm-hmm.
like the Vox building on, up on
Yeah,
11th Street,
Vox
you know what I
Populi.
mean?
Yeah.
A lot of the galleries, I mean, there's an energy here
Mm-hmm.
it's just under the surface. You know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
just like, it's there, you know what I mean? We can feel it,
Mm-hmm.
but there doesn't seem to be like the amount of like support um, that there could be,
Yeah.
and just like you said, that's no one person or one entity's fault. It's just how it's been. And um, I think without an influx of will and
Mm-hmm.
desire to to like springboard the art scene in Philadelphia to like another level,
Yeah.
but like you said, that's a collective thing. You know what I mean? You have to have like collectors behind that. You have to have like
Mm-hmm.
gallerists willing to like take more chances on different things. Um, and it's hard right now, especially because the economy isn't what it could be.
Yeah.
There's a lot of as we know, there's all these things happening in the world that
Mm-hmm.
have people really concerned about everything, especially
Yeah.
money. So,
Yeah.
um, but the thing is, we're all here still making work. We're all here
Very true.
doing our work. We're all here. We're doing the thing. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So,
I think
regardless of everything else that's happening.
Yeah, I was gonna say I think in the next 3 to 5 years, there's a real opportunity for Philadelphia to truly make its mark. And the
Mhm.
reason I say that is that, we're in a, you know, global wealth transition,
Right.
from like uh the pre-boom generation, the early World War generation, to some of the boomers and all that, to coming into Gen X and now Gen Z. Like there's a lot of wealth being transferred, to younger people, and
Hmm.
that's causing a shift in a lot of art appreciation as well,
Right.
because there's it seems like it's jumped from abstract expressionism, pictures generation, to this ultra contemporary that's very commercial based, and it's missing, a group of artists that have been creating for a while, that are, now being rediscovered, or
Hmm. Right.
corrected. That's the
Right.
term that's been used in the
Yeah.
art
Yeah.
world right
Yeah.
now. And I think that that's the young people that are doing it.
Hmm.
Those are people that are coming in, that are new buyers, that aren't swayed by old ways of doing things, in ways
Hmm.
of collecting. They like things for a certain way. I don't agree with everything all the time, but I
Hmm.
do appreciate the enthusiasm in purchasing, because
Right.
I've seen, younger collectors, to where if they like something, they buy it, no
Right.
questions asked,
No
to
questions
where you
asked. Yeah.
still would have to haggle with a traditional, collector, because I don't know if we would say that's more art education. They've seen more, they know what questions to ask, or
Hmm.
is it just the younger generation knowing what they love and they don't care what
Hmm.
you think about it? I think
It's
that's a
yeah.
great dynamic.
Yeah, yeah, it's a wild. Yeah, I mean, I've been seeing it too, just from what I see online, and looking at um, looking at different like events and stuff like that, and seeing like this a larger like younger generation, people that are like maybe
Mm-hmm.
like 35 and under, um, gravitating towards I don't know. They're just yeah they're just picking up on a lot of stuff, and just just doing it. And like you said, yeah, there's you don't always understand what they're buying and why they're buying it, but whatever. That's cool. They're buying
But
art.
they are buying,
They are buying it. They're
they are
supporting
buying.
artists, so that's the important thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So one of my next questions is like, we hear about the new tools, right?
Hmm.
The AI, the
Right.
projectors for public art, the coding generate, like, as an artist who's been practicing physical based art for
Hmm.
40 years, how does
Yeah.
this new generation of ideas excite you or drive you nuts?
No, I mean, I've been trying to keep up with a lot of stuff and a lot of information about what's out there.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, the like say like the AI situation. Um, I don't know. I'm not really. I feel like there's some things to be worked out with that.
Oh
You know what
yeah.
I mean? There's a lot to be worked out with that, and I'm not fully on board with it. In terms, at least not visually, and I don't even know,
Mm-hmm.
like, I don't know about the written. I haven't actually tried like writing anything with chat GPT or anything, or any other AI, and so I don't know about that so much. But the
Mm-hmm.
thing the things that really kind of bother me happens to be the we're such an online we're in such an
Mm-hmm.
online world now,
Mm-hmm.
and there's like massive amounts of disinformation and misinformation that's out there floating around, and you know people really like cannot tell the difference between
Yeah.
something that's real and something that's not, and you have
Yeah.
to do, and really, like, if you're not used to, like, doing your actual research about something, and
Mm-hmm.
you're just like taking this stuff in. I mean, a lot of times your viewpoint is just going to be like skewed left and right. In
Yeah.
terms of art, there's not much about visual like AI work that I like at all.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't find it that engaging.
Yeah.
And as an artist myself, as an artist myself, I don't find it engaging, just partly because yeah, I like making things. I do use. I mean, I use Photoshop. I use other, other tools and whatnot. I'm used to
Yeah.
using those things, but in terms of like, making art by prompts, I don't know. It doesn't excite me. That's
Yeah.
that's the
I,
bottom line. It just doesn't excite me. So
yeah, and I've been like, when it came out, like I'm a tech guy too. I've worked in
hmm
tech industries alongside art for years, and the code part of it excites me, and
okay,
the
yeah,
the building and all of that. And I've went through the back and forth of like a love hate. Actually still do in some cases with it, because I'm solely against letting AI do everything for you.
yeah,
Solely against that.
absolutely.
But I've seen ways in which AI has helped speed up processes,
hmm
um, to where it's been brilliant. Like,
Yeah,
where as a coder, and me working on different apps or working on different programs, or even with trying to organize information. Because one of the things I do when I write and I go to shows is like I'm a heavy note taker.
yeah,
Like I'll go into an exhibition, especially if I have to write about it. I'll
right.
write about. I'm writing as I'm going along. You know what I
hmm
mean? Like, oh, I saw this. This was cool. And
hmm
one thing Chat GPT did for me as the writer me was organize all of those things into something that was coherent that I could,
That you could
build
then
from.
like build from. Yeah,
Yeah. So I
yeah.
was like, man, like this actually saves me about an hour,
Oh
you
yeah, yeah,
know?
that's cool. That's cool. Yeah, yeah, I like that. I like that aspect of it. Yeah, and I've seen some people like photographers that I follow like on
Mm-hmm.
Instagram who have like they use their they've been using they use this one guy that I follow a lot. He uses his own work, his own like physical like or digital camera work,
Mm-hmm.
and he makes AI generated scenarios with his
Yeah.
own work, which is I think is pretty cool. You know what I
I think
mean?
it's dope.
It's
Yeah.
the other part that I don't like, where people are just like you know prompting, and it's just scraping the web or wherever for whatever images. And then there's the corporate side of things, where companies
Mm-hmm.
are always going to look for the lowest common denominator.
Yep.
Like anything that's going to allow them to make more profit with less cost is going to be something that they're going to go after. So there's a lot of problems with like potential problems with with physical artists like illustrators and everybody
Mm-hmm.
losing jobs to AI, because companies want to just like they don't care about like anything else. They just want to get their message out any way
Yeah.
possible by the least with the least spending the least amount of money.
Yep.
That's an issue. You know what I mean? And we're
Mm-hmm.
seeing. So yeah, it's so that part of it I really don't like. You know what I mean? But how are you thinking about how you're using it, and how I've seen some other people experiment with it? Yeah, I'm totally for that.
What I've seen lately, and what I was always an advocate of, like, nothing's going to change the physical hand of creativity. I always
Right.
think, I think about that Leonardo da Vinci painting. I always forget the name of it, but it's the two hands touching, the
Oh
fingers.
yeah,
I,
that's part of the Sistine Chapel.
yeah,
Yeah.
I don't know why I always forget that, but it's something about that kind of like keeps me grounded. That
Mhm.
fine art will always be what we know it to be. But
Right.
then there's this other part where, in the business aspect of it, to where we see constant layoffs. I mean, we see
Yeah.
new ones every day. At
Yeah,
least two
yeah, yeah. I mean,
companies
look what happened
every day.
last week. With Sports
Right?
Illustrated, and yeah,
Like,
crazy.
so what I see with that is, like, instead of on a legal aspect, you know, being how easy is it for a corporation to control an AI employee? You know what
Right.
I mean? To know, okay, these are the parameters. They'll never go outside that parameters. It doesn't
Right.
those parameters. It doesn't need to think. It doesn't need that.
Right.
How soon is it before they start replacing that creative with an AI? Because it's
hmm
like, all right, here's our brand guide,
Right.
here's our history,
Right.
here's some of the ideas that we're pitching, some of the sketches that we've done. Give us 5 examples of that. to where that's going to be so good to where artists will stop receiving commissions.
Right.
They'll stop receiving public art opportunities because you can now think of something, bring it into an OBJ file or export it into something that can be 3D printed, where it can be controlled and streamlined to where instead of, the city of Philadelphia reaching out to Tim for a public art piece, they'll reach out to McFarlane and Co., who's a design company, what I mean, that specializes in fabricating large public art pieces, to where now the artist has to even become a business even more now, and take on more cost of running an actual, potentially a corporation or LLC, and that takes them further away from being the creative hand, to where now they have no choice but to become that prompt engineer. That's I see that a little bit of it, and it's going to take that collective fight back, that pushback to say, and I think mostly from collectors and from corporations, because they're the ones that are going to be the eventual owners, of these works. The artists aren't collecting them themselves. There isn't many artist to artist transactions anymore like they used to be back in the day. I mean, there's certain artists that are buying other artists' work, but many artists are, once they get their sale, they're paying rent, they're paying bills, and they're doing other things to survive, or even just progress, do other things. How do you feel, or where do you see the artist's place, in the next year, 3 years, 5 years?
Artists aren't going anywhere. You know what I mean? We're still going to be here. We're still going to be, making work. I don't think I think if anything, the want of like actual physical objects made by a person is going to become even more wanted. You know what I mean? I don't think it's going to, it's not going to, I don't think it's going to kill off artists. You know what I mean? I don't think AI is going to totally kill off artists. It's going to make some things change. We're going to have to adapt to certain things. But I think overall, I mean, there's just too many people who are artists and too many people who are making work, who want to make work, continue to make work, where it's, like that human nature being what it is, it's not going to completely eradicate artists. I don't believe that. I do believe that it's definitely like how AI and AI adjacent programs are used, are definitely going to change how some things are done. And people, like I said, people are going to have to adapt in different ways. I don't know what those ways are yet. But in terms of like fine art, I don't know. I don't think it's going, we're not going to go anywhere, some of us will have to adapt. Some of us won't. And, the landscape will change, and that's just how it is, change is inevitable.
Change is the only thing that's constant.
Exactly.
I always tell people, it's like, that's one thing you can bank on, is that something's going to change.
Exactly. And you can rail against it all you want to. And, I mean, we can each have our own personal, like, boundaries about what we want to do and what we let into our lives and everything. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think that's important, understanding, what's important to you, what's most important to you, and what's important for you to, to like hold on to for yourself for whatever reason, you know what I mean? And whatever boundaries you want to have for yourself.
What do you see as a goal? And this is my wrap up question, because I always like to, because I know I can talk to you for hours, bro. I'm trying to tell people I like to keep it. I try to keep it to an hour, because like I be telling folks, like, yo, when this comes to art and it's a brother that's engaging and we're talking, we'd be here all day. What I mean? What do you think is a very, very near goal for you, like a 1 year goal, 3 year goal, and then what's an ultimate goal for you as an artist that you're trying to reach, that you feel that you're getting close to it, and you just need a few other things to work in your favor, like just like how when you found with Bridget, when you found the collection. What do you think is coming down the pipe for you in that regard?
I think for me, it's moving up to another level in terms of having my work seen and collected. Those those are like near goals, and further, I should say, like longer term goals. Longer term goals would
Yeah.
be um, longer term goals would be having my work collected by more museums, having work, um, yeah, having more of my work preserved in an institution would be good.
Yeah.
And at the same time, I want to be able to like have have my work seen on a wider scale.
Yeah.
I think that's a huge thing for me. Is just getting my work out into the world a little bit more. I mean, I've shown in different places here and there, but I just want to like ramp that up a little bit. And I feel
Most
like
definitely.
I do feel like I'm getting close. You know what I mean?
Oh
I
yeah.
just it's just just staying the course.
Yeah. You only got to be right once. That's the thing.
Right.
It's like, I've seen a bunch of people say that, Mark Cuban, Jay-Z, a bunch of others, just like, anytime I start feeling like, I'm going down this rabbit hole that, I might waste 2-3 years of my life trying to do a project or figure something
Mm-hmm.
out, I
Mm-hmm.
always think to that and say, you only got to be right once. So if it
Right.
takes whatever time, if that's that once for you,
Mm-hmm.
ride out with it, because you
Yeah,
never know
yeah,
what it can do
exactly,
for you.
exactly. Yeah, I'm also looking at like, I also, want to see my work in more Black collections too.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Oh yeah.
something that I want to, that I'm thinking about as well. How to,
Mm-hmm.
um, because like right now, especially, there's been a big figurative push for a while, and which is great.
Mm-hmm.
I've been enjoying like over the past like 8, 9 years
Yeah.
or more actually, seeing Black artists, get their flowers, man, get
Oh
into
yeah.
these like museum shows and these like high end gallery shows. I mean, it's been
Loving it.
fantastic. I'm just looking for more like, it would be like for more abstract work by Black artists to get
Yeah.
up there and be collected and accepted by everybody, really.
Yeah, I
Uh,
think once folks are aware,
mm-hmm.
and I think that's one of the beautiful things that's happening in the last 5 years is that, you know, Black people are becoming aware that they can be a collector, that they
Oh yeah,
can participate,
absolutely,
that they
absolutely.
can support an artist. And a lot of
Right,
them are, and some of them are, trying to say, well, I want to buy something of value, or I want to buy something this and this and that, and
right,
but many are just, buying what they love. And
mm-hmm.
as long as people are buying,
Right,
that's a win for artists.
right,
As long as
absolutely.
support's there,
Yeah,
that's a win. I might not
absolutely.
like what you collect every time, but
Right,
as long as you're collecting,
right, exactly,
that's a win.
exactly.
So thank you for joining us on this episode of Cultural Canvases, Black Men Reshaping Fine Art and Creative Spaces. I've been your host, Badir McCleary, and this has been my brother, Tim McFarlane, who I've been just happy. It's been an honor to have him on here and exploring his story. And this won't be the last time we chat, and of course. So we need y'all to subscribe, stay inspired, share, check out Tim's work, go see the mural, check out the shows, especially if you're in Philly, reach out to him. It's a lot of stuff going on, and it's literally just the beginning. Like, he might be 40 years in, but it's just the beginning for the rest of y'all. So,
Yeah.
until next time, peace, y'all. Talk to y'all soon.